we have Michael Anderson here. Michael Anderson, you were on the show like a month or two ago.
I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And rave reviews.
Great episode.
Yeah.
Really. I listened to it with my wife and she loved it.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Thanks, guys.
There's a lot of good feedback. You came in with a lot of knowledge. Knowledge is valuable, and practical knowledge in ways for people to, heal and get better. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Before we dive in, and what we're going to talk about is divorce.
Yeah.
Which is not
a really light topic.
It's really a fun topic.
Really, really sweet.
We've all been just like giddy about this one. No, before we get into though, some exciting things are happening with the Men Who Love God. Mm-hmm. We have applied for our tax exempt 501c3 nonprofit status, which means we can accept donations now.
Wow.
Because this podcast is not cheap to produce, and we've been doing it just as a labor of love for a while. And
we
now,
give each other back rubs as payment. That's
we call each other crying like, we can do this. We can do this. But in all seriousness, I feel the call this has to keep going. And so we're making it possible for the listeners of the show to be supporters. If you go to themenwholovegod.com/donate, you can donate anything from $5 to $500 or more. And you can become even $5 a month, just like NPR, become a monthly person who donates. And it's such a huge blessing for us because it is expensive to do this and it takes so much time. And if you feel at all joined with us in this cause to better men's lives, better families' lives, and just bring people closer to God, we would love to have you support us.
Mm-hmm. There's plenty of benefits that are going to be rolling out with all sorts of things like this, but
we have. In fact, we have I should have wore the shirt. There's a merch shop. We have Men Who Love God shirts, hats, tumblers, socks, all this cool stuff.
You guys have socks?
Yeah, we have socks.
You know what? I don't think you deserve to wear a shirt anymore. I think you have to do the rest of this without your shirt on, just because you're not wearing the shirt. Yeah, sorry, you don't deserve it.
Okay, well, that's next time.
Okay, yeah.
I'm already in the frame. We're not going to ruin that.
I actually want to wear a cowboy hat for the rest of
Oh, yeah, there you go.
the interview.
Everybody, he just announced it. See?
Okay, cowboy hat. Oh, one more thing I want to say is we are in pre-production doing a show for women, by women, and I am so stoked about it. It's going to be so good. But once again, it relies on people supporting this. So please go to themenwholovegod.com/donate, and we will be forever grateful. Okay, now getting into the show. Okay, Michael, you're here.
Yeah.
Because I felt like you were the right guy for this conversation. In my life, I'm 42, and I'm seeing an avalanche of divorce happening to people I know close to me. Mm-hmm. And it's not uncommon after I catch up with someone to hear that they are been divorced or going through a divorce. And it's tough. And it seems to me, and tell me if this is true or not, I think culturally it's been projected that it's not, that men kind of get the shaft in divorce.
Yeah.
Like with court rulings and visitation and alimony. I don't know if this is true. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably so widespread. It'd be hard to generalize this is what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. But at least in the state of Utah, where I practice and meet with people, I hear that a lot from guys. They're just feeling like
they feel like it's not fair for them.
Yeah. And again, I think, with such a broad topic of divorce, I don't know how specific you can be, right? This is how it always is, but I'm definitely hearing that from the guys that I'm working with.
Okay.
Are there what examples can we give of the ways that,
Before this, I want to just, because if you haven't listened to Michael's previous episode, Michael, you're a licensed therapist for what is your specialty so people can understand where you're coming from?
Yeah. So I'm a marriage and family therapist. And what I work with predominantly is men overcoming porn.
Yeah.
But
which probably has a lot to do with this topic.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's crossover, but also, it being a marriage and family therapist, I've spent a lot of time with couples and whatnot, and a lot of couples either on the brink of divorce, trying to navigate a divorce, wondering if divorce is their option. And so, this is something, again, I think you alluded to, it's too common, right? It's sad to see that it's happening.
Yeah, I got some stats. I don't know if I want to read too many of them, and then Mason, I'm going to go to your point.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. 70% of marriages or of divorces are instigated by women.
Wow.
It says 69, but 70%.
Yeah.
Why? What does that mean? Like, why is that the stat? What's causing that?
70% of divorces instigated by women?
Like women are initiating it.
Wow.
And that was from, it seemed to me like a real.
Yeah.
Okay. It is, we'll edit this part. Let me find it because I want to give credence to.
You don't want to get fact checked,
Yeah. It is.
But I have heard this, so this isn't something that you're making up. I know I have heard this.
Really, I haven't heard this. So that's really interesting.
Divorce,
pretty.
And I don't expect you to have all the answers. I'm just interested in your opinion, because you are in this arena day by day. I am not. Let's see. It is. It's so annoying that I thought I saved the open things, but apparently I didn't. Modern statistic of divorce in America. That's what I looked up. Okay, here we go. This is actually divorce.com.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know okay, so the United States has the 6th highest divorce rate in the world, with 40 to 50% of married couples filing for divorce. Women started almost 69% of all divorces.
Wow.
So I'm just curious what your opinion on why that is.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad you brought that. I'd never heard that stat before. That's really interesting. I wonder if a couple. Yeah, I wonder if a couple of thoughts that come to my mind is. Oh, sorry.
You're fine. Just get that.
You feel free to move that.
Yeah,
whichever way.
You can move it around. Just keep it pointed at your mouth.
Point your mouth. Yeah, I do wonder why that is. I think that's really interesting. I think there's been a push culturally recently, right, for women to embrace their rights, individuality, and I wonder if that's a part of it, is this idea of, this, I don't want to have to, well, and I think too, there's so much more like freedom, I guess, right? For like, I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but
I know what you're saying.
Like there's like this cultural shift of women empowerment.
Don't need men.
Which the empowering of women, I think you're doing a great job at not stating that as this is a bad thing. Empowering women is wonderful. Yeah. But then it's the and you don't need anybody.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
is there's this
you're doing that.
really important movement of empowering women. Mm-hmm. Right. I think at times, I think talked about this when I was on here last time, it's human nature to shift from one extreme to the other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think we've been in a society where one extreme has been the disempowerment of women. Tragically, and we're shifting, but I think there's some extremism there where it's what you said, Mason, and I don't need a man. Mm-hmm. And so if a marriage isn't serving me and my individuality, then I can move on. Now I do think here that there's something important where a lot of times I think when a woman instigates a divorce, it's not because she's like, I don't need a man. Mm-hmm. In my experience working with couples, a lot of times, someone, whether it's the man or the woman, whoever instigates the divorce, actually is bringing up the divorce because they don't know how else to get across to their partner how much pain they're in. And wow, I think a lot of times, men that I've worked with are not as emotionally open. I think there's a stigma around being emotionally open, being emotionally available, and so men kind of will suppress what they're feeling and will try and avoid difficult issues in their marriage. And the wife has spent a long time trying to communicate that. And so finally, in a desperate effort to communicate what they're feeling, the depth of their pain, I don't know how else to tell you how much I want to work on our marriage other than to say, if nothing changes, I need a divorce. Mm.
I have just a question that I thought about while you were explaining that. Do you feel like it's the same problem of these, obviously in a different way? Is it the same thing as men believing they don't need help? they don't need anybody to tell them what needs to be done. And so they're just continuing in this self-abuse, abuse of others, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
If it's the most extreme or just, not being aware or open, is it the same kind of, do you feel like it's the same kind of thing where it's men, I think, feel like they have to do it by themselves. You shouldn't have to get help. Nobody should tell you what to do or whatever. So they end up, it's this form of, I hate using this word, but it's kind of like a toxic independence where I can do stuff on my own.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's absolutely a place there for what you're saying. And I think probably one of the most sensitive things that I think we'll be navigating in this conversation is divorce is already so loaded with like, it's your fault, no, it's your fault, totally. No, it's your fault, no, it's your fault. Where as we talk about these factors like women empowerment or toxic independence, right? I hope it never comes across as like we're just trying to shift, like here's this, the man has to take this responsibility, like it's the man's fault or it's the woman's fault.
It takes two to tango. It takes what we're saying.
It takes two to tango. But I do believe, again, I can only really speak anecdotally from my own experience, but working with couples, it was always interesting to me how much the story was when the couple came in of the wife is instigating couples therapy, right? And I think there is an element of, with men, we want to be, there's like this, like we feel this burden to like be able to take care of our self, take care of our own family, like to ask for help, to admit that like, hey, something's wrong in our marriage is like a really scary thing to do for a lot of men.
Yeah,
I think it's a factor.
That's a hard realization.
Yeah.
Do you think, and this is my opinion, and I think there's some backing to support this, but there is a sense of men not growing up. There's like this prolonged adolescence of video game usage, of shows, of, I don't know, like, is that a thing? It seems like our culture, like I'm 40 and all of the stuff from my childhood is still a big part of my life. It's like, I do play Dungeons and Dragons with friends on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
Like it's almost very easy to still be in your adolescence with specifically video games or the culture of going out and having fun and being a kid as long as possible. Do you ever see that as a problem? Like women being like, you got to grow up.
Yeah. But I think here, my perspective on this is this idea. So men, the message gets across to men of like, you're being a child, you need to grow up.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm all about the need for men to step up. So I fully believe that our families need us. But here's my thoughts on this are we have the societal issue where boys are told to be tough, to suck it up, to suppress emotion, right? They're never taught how to actually emotionally regulate. And so now they're 20-something, 30-something, 40-something men with like really big issues in their life. Marriage, whether your marriage is good or bad.
Give me an example of what these issues are of someone who has never learned to emotionally regulate.
Well, yeah. So the emotional needs of your partner, meeting the emotional needs of your partner.
Like are you saying being mature enough to anticipate and meet what your wife needs?
Yeah, 100%. And not even just anticipate, but like when your partner comes to you with issues, like learning, like it is an emotional experience to hear from your partner of this is what I'm needing from you. This is what's frustrating me about the relationship. That's an emotional fatiguing experience.
That has been hard for me in the past.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was really the first thing I was going to go to is this, like the emotional maturity to acknowledge that they're going through something versus just like, well, again, like I've been told to suck it up.
Totally.
Suck it up.
Well, but here's the interesting thing about that, right?
It's not great.
It's not great. It's not ideal. And the thing about that is, so you take like that, right? Or I mean, raising kids, right? Yeah. Stress of just the world today, the financial stress, like everything. And these men don't have emotional coping regulation skills. But so guess what we go to? We go to things that have brought us soothing. We've never learned how to emotionally regulate and process ourselves. And so we go to things like our video games when we were kids.
Protectors, like you said in your episode. It's a protecting behavior. Protecting behavior,
things that like artificially soothed us, right? Which in of itself is not a problem until it's our only strategy, right? Like I don't think a man playing video games is damaging. I know plenty of marriages that are really strong and the man plays video games, right?
For sure.
But it's when the man says subconsciously, I don't know how to regulate this, so let me pull away from my wife and go numb out with video games. Right? I think that's the problem. But then men get this label slapped on them of, you're such a boy, you're so childish, you're so weak. Why can't you grow up? And they like, if that's the label they get slapped on them, they start to believe it. Right?
Okay, this has been amazing so far.
I was going to say, it's amazing how you can say something that, we're like, what do you think? What do you think? And then you say something so simple that's like, oh, well, that certainly explains a lot.
Sure. I think that this is such a good foundation for going to the next part. I don't want to spend too much time on why divorce happens, because the fact of the matter is there's divorce happening right now with a lot of men and women that I know personally. So let's navigate going through the divorce and what my goal with this episode is to alleviate as much suffering as possible. So when they go through it, they don't look back and say, I wish this, I would have known this. So I have some user questions, and these are from women.
Great.
Okay. And I have some from men too. There's 3 questions, and they're kind of similar, but it says, how do you know when it's done? How long do you try to work it out? And what are some signs it's over?
Wow. Yeah. Should we just take them one at a time?
Yeah. So the first one was, how do you know when it's done?
How do you know when it's done?
Or what are some signs it's over? I think this is, and how long do you try to work it out? I don't know. You can take whichever one you want of those. They're kind of similar.
Yeah.
How about this? How long do you try to work it out? I think that precludes, how do you know when it's done?
Yeah. There obviously, I think there's no set time, right? Of like, give it 6 months, then you decide.
It'd be easy if there was.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, right? It's be like, I think when somebody asks that question, I think what they're really asking is, when will I be able to walk away from this and not have this fear of regret that I could have done more? I think they're trying to
really excellently said.
They're wanting that assurance, right? And the fact of the matter, I think this is what makes divorce so one reason that makes divorce so hard is you might not ever know that like you couldn't have done anymore. That's the risk you take with divorce. It's also conversely the risk you take with staying in a relationship, right? That you just, in marriage, in love, in relationships, you have to be willing to say, I'm going to embrace uncertainty. And so what I would want to tell anyone who's like asking that question, right, is I just want to give them, first off, I want to let them know that what they're going through is so hard, and it's okay that you'll never know. And you've got to be able to give yourself that type of grace and that self-compassion, right? There'll never be a period at the end of this and be like, okay, I've tried everything, I know. All you can do is take your best guess and take that courage of like, this is what I feel is best now for the relationship, whether it's to stay or to leave. Does that make sense?
No,
I
totally.
think it's a great question, because there is no answer to this, to that. It's be okay with uncertainty. And to bring a spiritual perspective to it, I think one of the greatest things that we can learn, and the hardest thing, is trust.
Yeah.
Not trusting yourself, but trusting yourself is very important. I don't want to negate that at all, because it's important to have a good relationship with yourself, but first trusting God. And I don't want to say that God's going to tell you what to do in this, but just knowing that uncertainty, that you're still held. You're still, if you can say this is the best choice, and I'm not speaking to divorce, I've never been divorced, but in my life on hard decisions, like, God, this is my best choice. And I feel, and this is what I've used the faculties that you've given me, the brain and the wisdom that you've given me, and I'm in contact with you, and this is the best choice. The next step is courage to be able to accept that God is with you in that. And so I don't know if that's good advice for this situation, but in hard decisions in my life, it essentially goes down to courage. Courage to trust that God is always with you, still loves you no matter what you've done, but he has your best interest and is with you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Well, and that desire to know is indicative of how important something is to you.
Yeah.
Think about how much in life we just want to know, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Those are the things we value. That we want to know them. We want to know, again, especially things of God, where what am I doing? What's my purpose? Where's my people? What am I supposed to be doing? To want to know means that's where your values are right now.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I think what you just said about, it's okay to not know, but to try, to obviously keep it important to you and do what you can within reason, within absolute reason, to be able to either stick with it or walk away at the end and say, no, I think that I am doing what's right by me, what's right by us. And then in the future, reassessing once again, because it's never like, all right, I made the decision one time and that's the decision I'm sticking with. Things change all the time. The environment shifts always.
Yeah, totally.
What are some signs it's over?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
I would hate to answer this question.
Yeah.
So I would say do your best. And this is not for anyone to like make a decision based off this podcast, but what do you see as some signs that it's like irreparable?
And by over, okay, let's operationalize the word over. By over, you mean irreparable.
I'm assuming her question, what are some signs it's over, that it's like not going to be the right decision to stay married?
Yeah. So let's just make it as a backdrop, right? With all these questions that we'll never ever know for certain, right? Okay. Uncertainty is a part of all this. Uncertainty is part of all this, and that's what makes love so vulnerable, makes love so risky, right? But I think just some important things here. I'm curious how many couples even just have that conversation with each other of saying like something like that. So I was working with a client once, and she was going back and forth about whether or not she wanted to divorce her husband. Again, interesting with your fact, right? 70% is submitted by women, and this was not even on her husband's radar, but she was really trying to go back and forth about what she wanted to do, and we talked about this idea of, well, when's the last time that you've had this conversation with your spouse of like, this is what I'm contemplating. I don't know if I can do this anymore. This is hurting so bad. And I'm just wondering if you're willing to really work on this. I'm willing to work on this. I'm just wondering if you're willing to work on this, and just seeing what your spouse's answer is, right? If, I think that could be a really good place to start, right? Is just seeing, do they say yes? Do they say no?
Do they deny it's a problem?
Yeah. It's like, this isn't an issue. Like, we don't need to do this, right?
Well, and at the root of all that is this problem of, I think, is the communication. Yeah. Has communication broken down?
Yeah.
Is there no more, like, if you're just going to go straight to, if anybody's going to go straight to, I think maybe I have to initiate a divorce here, does that mean there's just no more talking?
Right.
Does that mean you're no longer asking questions?
That's what you started with.
Yeah.
Right. Today. Well, and you'd be surprised at how many couples they don't even like, they don't even have this type of preliminary conversation, right? Where they're just like, here's the state of the marriage. And I think
it's so hard to just think about, like, just that basic thing of talking to each other.
Yeah.
See where you're at, assessing each other. I think, man.
Yeah. And a lot of people, that takes a level of vulnerability that's really scary for a lot of people, right? Because if they say no, if their partner says no, then that's scary, right? Like, no, I don't want to work on this, right? If their partner says yes, and then 6 months go down the road and nothing changes, right? Then that's scary. Like, there's so much uncertainty. Yeah. But I think that's you have to at least assess in the relationship where each person's at and their willingness to even make this work. It's an important part, I think. So
are you suggesting that if one person is not willing to work on it and one is, it's probably an irreparable marriage?
It's interesting because I think what I wouldn't want someone to walk away from is this idea of have that conversation once and then they know everything they need to know about the partner.
It might be a 6 by 6 month conversation. Who knows? Yeah.
I caught you off guard once while you were working on something and you said no. And okay, that's the answer I need, right? Thank you.
Boy, we've all been there.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle. I'm in the zone right now. And you asked me, hey, do you still think I'm beautiful? And you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, my answer sounded so angry, but yes.
on this note, how common is it for, let's say a woman comes in and says, I'm in a ton of pain, and then she does bring it up with her husband, and her husband honestly doesn't see, well, I guess he'd be a psychopath if he doesn't appreciate his wife's pain, but he's like, I thought the marriage was good. Is anyone ever blind? Is anyone ever like,
totally.
Well, okay, so like people don't view the status of the marriage the same.
Totally. Yeah. Well, maybe go back to what we were talking about, like this idea. Again, this can happen on both sides. I've had it happen on both sides. So maybe I could give an example of both sides. Yeah. But yeah, we as men a lot of times have such a hard time emotionally regulating that sometimes shutting down and not talking about emotions can give us a false sense of security, right? The absence of talking about hard things.
Guilty.
Right. Oh, totally.
Because there's no problem.
There's no problem.
See? Nobody's hurting.
Because
if we didn't say it, it's not there.
Exactly. Because we've been made to believe, right, that good equals not feeling pain.
Yeah.
Not discussing, right?
Mm-hmm. Or I would even say like nothing means like I'm feeling nothing.
Yeah.
Not happy, not sad. I'm just nothing.
Yeah.
So that means nothing is happening.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
But a total complete lie.
Yes. And I have seen the exact opposite happen too, right? Where a man comes to me and is like, I just cannot get on the same page with my wife on how the pain that we're feeling in the marriage. So I think it absolutely goes both ways. But even going back to that question, here's what I think, as we've been talking through this, I think is really important. In marriage, we are always collecting, whether we realize it or not, we're always collecting evidence. We're collecting evidence on whether or not we feel safe and secure in our relationship, right? And I think divorce happens when, and this, I'm making this point to highlight that this shouldn't just be one conversation, right? Do you want to work on this? No. Okay, then we're done, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think we're always collecting this evidence, and I think divorce happens when we've done our very best. We amalgamate all the evidence we've collected, and if it comes back to, I can never be 100% sure, but my best guess here is that this isn't going to work ever, right? But that goes both ways, and so you can absolutely start to share evidence with your partner for them to collect that you do want to work on it. But like, just security isn't built on one instance, and so insecurity isn't also built on one instance as well.
Yeah. So. Very fair. It's very pragmatic. I like it. Man, this has been very enlightening so far. I want to turn to a man. This is questions from men.
Yeah, cool.
He said, divorce can be scary and overwhelming because emotionally everybody is really charged and probably not thinking clearly. How important is seeing a divorce therapist to really evaluate where you're at and if getting a divorce is something that you really want?
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important for that exact reason. What he's saying, divorces are so emotionally charged. I mean, how could they not be, right? And so having somebody to not only, like, we usually talk about going to a therapist, like get like a third party opinion. Yes, that's important, but to have somebody that can actually hold space for your emotional experience and like validate it and empathize with it is incredibly healing. And there's a good chance you're not getting that type of emotional safety from your partner, right? If you're going through a divorce, right? And so talking to someone who can hold space for your experience, help you regulate, right? And then offer guidance on this it's so important, especially if there are children involved.
Yeah. What's the success rate? I don't know if that's a good word, but out of all the couples who come in with divorce on the table because they met with therapists and were able to have healing, what's the percentage of ones that were fixed as opposed to?
Yeah, I actually don't know the stat on it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
What about your experience?
Yeah, I'm trying to go to my experience here. I feel like out of all the couples that said divorce is on the table, I would say most ended up deciding to work on this. I can remember a handful of them who went through with the divorce. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to say because I don't know what happened 6 months after I was done visiting with them, right? But I think the benefit of it is whether you end up getting a divorce or whether you stay married or whether it just kind of prolongs the divorce another 6 months, like whatever. What therapy allows you to do is it helps you to get the tools and the skills to navigate the divorce or your emotions and your communication much more effectively. And again, especially if there are kids involved, I talk with couples a lot of like, so much of this might be your journey of learning how to divorce well, right? Because divorcing well can save the emotional well-being of your children, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want to talk about next. Yeah. So someone close to me, I would say divorced pretty amicably. It looks that way. But now, 2 years later, there's some big issues with children. Mm-hmm. Like with the children using one parent to attack the other, to manipulate.
Yep. Yeah.
So, okay, say I'm going to go through a divorce and I have 3 children. What do I need to know to make this as easy as possible?
Yeah. I think,
and I hate that I said easy as possible. But like,
I know.
What? Yeah, you're going to answer the question correctly.
I know what you meant.
Thank
you. Yeah.
How can I make it fun?
Yeah. How can I make this an enjoyable experience for all involved?
So that's not possible. No, but I know what you meant. Yeah. So, and specifically in context of like navigating with children.
This is I'm middle-aged, and kids are a huge part of my life, and men our age. I mean, this is like the stage we're in.
Yeah. First off, I would encourage anyone in that situation to first take a deep breath and be self-compassionate towards themselves, because the truth of the matter is it's going to affect your children to be in a home with a dysfunctional marriage. It's going to affect your children to go through a divorce. Mm-hmm. So there's no way to I get a lot of people like, I don't want to like affect the children by getting a divorce, right? And I say, well, there's going to be an effect either way, right? Mm-hmm. And so
you're saying whether you stay in a bad marriage or unhealthy marriage.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people say like, let's just stay together for the kids.
Dr. Laura Schlesinger, remember her from the 90s?
Yeah.
She's like, you stay together until they're 18 and out of the house, no matter what. I always thought it sounded good, but I think like what you're saying, like to watch your parents be in a really toxic relationship, is that doing more damage than if they would have?
Well, and it feels like general advice for very personal. Every marriage is different.
Yeah.
Every single relationship, every problem is different.
Yeah.
It's hard to be like, no, this is what you have to do. Everybody should do this. It's like, you might do worse damage. Yeah, like you say, seeing that every day in your home.
It's just like the key, right? Whether you're divorced or whether you're together, the key is, is to hold emotional space for your kids with their experience.
How do you do that when you're a mess yourself?
That is like such a good question, right? Like that is the question, right? Obviously I would love for any person going through a divorce, I would love, and my dream would be that they would have the resources to go see a therapist, right? To process through this, to work with someone.
And the reality is some people can't.
The reality is some people can't, right? And so that's why I think giving yourself a little bit of grace and self-compassion here with this process of like, and by the way, some people can't, but a lot of people can. They just believe, they've just fooled themselves into thinking they can't.
Yeah.
So if you're there saying, but I can't go see a therapist, I don't have the resources, I would really strongly encourage you to sit with that problem for a little bit and ask yourself, if my only option was to make this work, as far as going, if my only option was to find a therapist, what would I do? Right.
I know. I'm not going to speak for all churches, but I know there are resources through churches to pay for the stuff like that. I mean, there are resources out there if you want it enough.
If you want it enough, and honestly, like what would you ever, could you ever put a price on your own wellness and on being able to show up for your kids, right? Like, so I would really strongly encourage someone to explore those resources. And
I think what you're saying, like at least what I'm gleaning from it, is look at your priorities.
Yeah.
What is the priority with going through this? Is it to make this as, to reduce the collateral damage, or is it just to get out of there fast and make sure you look the best in terms of what the other spouse, whoever it is? Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. It's look at your priorities. If you feel like you could pay for the access to therapy especially for your kids, but you might have to switch some budgets around. How important is it to you? Do that thing.
Well, and I think I do want to circle back to that question, right? Of what you're saying, but just to add on to what you're saying, Mason, I think there's a lot of people who, again, coming back to emotional regulation, it is like really scary to decide, yes, I'm going to go to therapy, is also admitting to yourself that, hey, there's some scary things here to face, right?
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of bravery to decide I'm going to make this that priority, even though it's like terrifying and scary to death, right? But you need to, and the reason why is, to your question, right, is these things to realize is you might be divorced and they might not be your partner anymore, but to your kids, you're still mom and they're still dad, or vice versa, right? Which means in their eyes, your role has not changed. In their eyes, they still are looking to you for an emotional safe place to be, for emotional validation, for empathy. When they come to you and they are screaming and going through all of the experience that comes with divorce, right? And acting out and misbehaving at school and all these things that happen that can't happen through divorce, they need even if they don't realize it, they need their parent there to be able to say, this is not your fault, right? Like, you're going through something super hard and I'm here for you, right? And so your role to them won't change, which is why it's so important to do your own work so that you can show up for them in that way. And this is, I understand what I'm about to say here is a really big ask for a lot of divorced couples, but to go and see a therapist even after the divorce together and get some help navigating co-parenting. And how do we stay, again, you're not married, but you, in your children's eyes, nothing has changed as far as your role, right?
You have a bond still.
And so these like same type of things that happen in marriage, right? Where both of you have to be on the same team with how you parent. Like triangulation, that idea of what you're talking about, like when kids start to use one parent against each other, right? Like it's so important to have someone help you navigate and say, okay, we're no longer married, but we are still these kids' parents. And so how do we perform the same roles and those same functions, even if our relationship looks different?
Never heard that before. That's a great piece of advice. I honestly believe that going to counseling even after.
And if you're listening, and you're like, I don't want to be in the same room with my partner, that's why we're divorcing. I'm like, that therapy is not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about your guys' relationship. Like, it's okay. You can still, like, we're not asking you to now rebond and repair with your partner who may have hurt you irreparably, right? So we're not asking you to do that. We're just asking you, I'm just encouraging you to show up and say, okay, how do we navigate being parents still, right, for the kids?
Someone said, I think that it's great if men who are considering getting divorced reach out for help and talk. Let me rephrase that. I think that it's great if men who are considering getting divorced reach out and talk to family and friends. I wish I would have talked to a divorce therapist before I got divorced.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, this man is wishing now that he would have, looks like, been open and more communicable with family, friends, and a therapist.
Yeah.
So this is someone who's been divorced and looking back.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe just using that as like a exclamation point to what we're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if it's the same. I know you probably do. Well, hopefully I'm not super off on this assumption. I have, I'm sure you all have plenty of friends, plenty of people you talk to. I bet you know who would, if you talk to somebody who would go straight to your side and be like, oh, like if you're in a divorce-like situation, somebody who would immediately take your side and be like, oh, that person, they don't get it. Your wife doesn't get it. You are awesome. And the people who would kind of act as a counselor.
Yeah.
Who go, well, are you considering, are people coming to your minds? I'm not going to ask for their names, but are people coming to your minds that in your life you go, yeah, I would probably talk to that person. I think when we talk about talking with family and friends, choose those people wisely. Choose those who you're going to share with. That's not to say like, and if you can't find someone, don't share. But I do think it's important to find someone who, like I have a best friend of over 20 years. And I know that if I were to call him about a problem, he wouldn't just go, yeah, everybody else sucks. You're the right one here. Yeah. Probably the first question he would ask me is, well, what are you doing in this situation? Mm-hmm. Like, how are you reacting to the stuff you've just told me about? And I think that's valuable. Mm-hmm. And I think if you don't know who those people are, find out who they are. But I bet you, as we've talked about it, you can... I bet you there's friends out there that you're going, oh yeah, they would totally be a level head, a center point to go, well, that's interesting what you told me about your wife or this other person, your boss. You haven't really said anything about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what you're doing?
Yeah.
Find those people. Yeah. They're important.
That takes emotional intelligence and maturity to want to know the truth, especially when you're hurt.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting stat. It says usually second or third marriages in the United States have a higher divorce rate. 60% of second marriages and about 73% of third marriages end in divorce. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
I think my belief on that is because a lot of times, and this is actually, I think this is a good circle back to those real questions of like, when do I know I've done enough, right? When is it over? Those types of things. A lot of times there's so much pain in marriage, like in when marriage isn't going well, right? That was not meant to say, don't get married, kids. That's not what I'm trying to say.
There's plenty of pain in marriage. There should be a lot of suffering.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Thank you, Ron Squire. I stole that from you.
He'll be honored.
There's so much pain, and it triggers your insecurities. It triggers your own trauma, everything. That sometimes it can be really hard. Going back to what you're saying, Mason, it can be really hard, really scary to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what needs to change in how I'm showing up for my partner? And there's this belief, this trap that so many people fall into of my partner should be making me happy. Therefore, if they're not making me happy, I should divorce them. Rather than the truth is your own inner work and your own love for yourself, right, creates fulfillment and creates happiness. And honestly, sometimes happiness makes, I just want to like gag when I say that word, because happiness is such a fleeting thing, right? Yeah. But hopefully you know what I'm talking about here in this. And so we don't work on ourselves. We put all the blame on our partner. And so we divorce them, and we get this idea of, if I could just go and find someone who could make me happy. And in fact, the Gottmans, you guys know who Julie and John Gottman are?
The Gottman Institute?
Yeah, Gottman Institute, like one of the leading researchers on marriage. They say one of the most common fantasies in marriage is the grass is greener on the other side. They find somebody they meet at work, at the gym, at church, or whatever, and their soccer practice, and their brain fixates on this fantasy of they could make you happy. It's one of the most. It's the most. I don't know if it's the most or one of the most common fantasies that happen in marriage.
I would imagine it could be the most.
Yeah,
totally. It totally makes sense.
And it's not true. It's just it's a defense mechanism that your brain has put right
to make it so you don't have to change.
To make it so you don't have to change, and to like provide like this like hope. Like if you're in an emotionally starved marriage, right?
Yeah.
It's a protective mechanism for your brain to say, you're emotionally starved. Well, look at that person. And this fantasy will give you some sort of fake phantom emotional fulfillment, right? And
the handful of encounters I have with this person in public places, they laugh at my jokes. They think I'm really cool. They would make a better wife or husband. Yeah, sure.
Right, exactly. And it's so much scarier, and it takes so much accountability is one of the most scary. Self-accountability is the most scary thing in the world. It's also the most supreme act of self-love, is to hold yourself accountable.
Whoa. Say that slower, and again, that was really good.
Self-accountability is the scariest thing in the world. It's also the most supreme act of self-love.
Holy cow. I'm glad you had him repeat that, because I didn't catch that.
That rings very true. Wow.
It is the most supreme. Yeah.
Why? Just not because I have my own, things I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I would love to hear your reasons for why.
Well, I think you could tie a lot to our relationship with God here, right? And how God treats us and views us. God, here's what we do. We confuse shame with accountability.
Okay.
If I kick the crud out of myself enough, then I'll actually change, right? Which doesn't work long term. God says, my goodness, I love you so much. You are capable of so much. And here's the accountability piece. Here's the expectations, right? Here's what I know you can accomplish, right? It takes so much self-love to be able, instead of saying, I suck, what is wrong with me? I'm a failure. I failed my marriage. I failed my kids. I'm so inadequate. But instead to be able to say, I'm going through something so hard. I love myself. And because I love myself, I'm not scared to face the things that I'm doing wrong, because the things I'm doing wrong don't define me. That's how much I love myself. I'm willing to look at the things I've done wrong and say, I still love you, which is what God does to us all the time.
Yeah.
And so this most supreme act of self-love is being able to look at all the stuff you're doing wrong in your marriage, all the stuff you're doing wrong as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, father, whatever, and say, that needs to change, and I love you. Most people don't do that. Most people are we are so riddled and marbled with our own insecurities and self-loathing and self-criticism that we're so scared of our shortcomings. And so we put all the onus on our partner and say, this feels a lot better emotionally to say, you are the problem. And so I'll divorce you. Let me go find someone who can fix my problems. Oh my gosh, you can't solve my problems either? Done. I'm not going to spend 10 years trying to make this work with you.
You're the common denominator.
That's the statistics of second and third marriages are even higher. Exactly. Because the person didn't take self-accountability, didn't heal, didn't fix their crap. And so they're looking for, this is just a true principle. If you're always looking for external validation and solutions, they will never fix your soul, which is inside of you. And you have to start from yourself.
You have to.
And the beautiful message of hope is, you have everything you need inside of you because you are God's child. You have infinite potential. You have infinite resources because you are God's child and because Christ makes it possible. So
the kingdom of God's within you.
The kingdom of God is within you.
110%, man.
Well, and I don't know. I think we've all read As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
Love that book.
This all just smacks of the greenhouse. Being willing to enter into that greenhouse and going, I do have some beautiful, beautiful blooming flowers in here, but boy, do I have a lot of weeds.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work on those and not just say, well, I'm going to close the greenhouse and back. No. Trust me. It's beautiful in there.
Yeah.
It's really nice in there. Don't go in. To go in and actually do the work. And so, the kingdom of God within us must be that same greenhouse where are we strangling that kingdom? Are we depleting the resources because we can't make room for more growth, better, more healthy growth?
That is beautiful. I love when complex, abstract ideas can be closed up in a nice package. And I know that's oversimplifying a lot of things, but what I've got today from this conversation is, no matter if you're thinking about divorce, no matter if you're actually going through the divorce, no matter if you're past the divorce, there is still so much hope. And the only thing that you need, the most important thing to do is yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you heal yourself and you do that hard work and you take accountability, you are becoming a light for your children, for your ex-spouse, for your future spouse. And so it just doesn't really matter where you've been, it's where you're going. And it can start right now with that self-accountability. God does not define us by our mistakes. He just sees our potential. And I truly believe that. I felt that in my life and through watching and seeing it in other people's lives.
Yeah.
So I love that we wrapped on that. I think that's an amazing conclusion. I want final thoughts from each of you guys, but let's go there.
Yeah.
Mason, you go first.
I think more than anything, I just, I like you started the conversation. It feels like it's the time in the season. Lots of people, lots of men, lots of women are getting divorced. And my heart goes out to each and every one of them. It's not, it's something that, every once in a while you think about it in your own life, where maybe you get in a fight in your marriage, maybe a disagreement. And, or maybe it's something I would say even scarier, a grass is greener situation where you're going, well, that would actually be better for me. Don't read too much into these things. Like, obviously work on yourself, but don't go much further than you need to. Like, I would say, if you're getting into an argument, or the same argument, maybe it's time to just reassess how you're both looking at the argument. But start with yourself. Don't go to the next step, which is, well, then this means it must be over. Start a little smaller. Don't take giant leaps. And I think that's the truth of it. Is, again, I think this is gospel principles. This is what God wants for us, is to take that breather. Like you said, Michael, is to give yourself some grace, give them some grace. Think about it before you start taking very long strides into worlds that you can't come back from. Be full of grace. Don't forget that you started this marriage out of love, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't immediately hop into, well, that's gone. It's over. Now I'm only critical. Now I'm only thinking about what I can get out of this. Keep the love as best you can, even if it's not a romantic love in the end. Keep the love as best that you can.
Yeah. Well said.
I was looking at you like, am I doing this right? Am I saying good stuff? I'm not trying to be a therapist, but I hope.
Holding up like cards, so to say.
Bad. That was a 4 out of 10.
He's like, No, that was beautiful. That was so well said. I think, as we've been talking and I've been thinking about more of those questions that you read about these people who are going through so much pain and trying to find answers, trying to do right by their family. And the thought that I just want to reemphasize this idea that self-love provides clarity. All those questions that people ask, right? I fully believe this. The more we go inside and heal ourselves and view situations from a place of enoughness, right? From this place of like, I love myself. It provides clarity. So I think so many times we get people divorced from a place of self-protection, right? I don't want to hurt anymore. I don't want to, this is triggering all of my insecurities and this is just scary. It'd just be so much easier to divorce. And there are absolute instances when like safety is an issue and the relationship needs to be done. But what I'm saying is, if you're willing to go inside the greenhouse and heal what needs healing, and heal your insecurities, heal the way you view yourself, heal self-contempt, heal self-hatred, and just view your marriage now from a place of self-love, I think a lot of clarity comes. And that's the beauty of love. That's the beauty of self-love. And I would just encourage anyone to go down that journey first of self-healing, before they make any decisions, right?
Beautiful. All right, my listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was leading up to it. It wasn't really fun to prepare for, but I'm really glad we tackled it. It's something that needs to be talked about. So if this has been beneficial to you, please know that it will probably be beneficial to someone else. Send it to them, send it in love, and follow the Spirit. And let's see if we can help people. I mean, my goal is for people to heal and become closer to God in Christ. And so please share it. Please leave a review. It helps the podcast. Like that is, I know you might not think it's a big deal. It does so much for me. It makes me recommitted every time to like keep going on this mission of building men, building families. And then if you feel like you want to support us, please head to themenwholovegod.com/donate. And we are so grateful. Thank you for being here. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you're looking for more ways to include God throughout your day, check out some of my recent music I created in partnership with Skylight. Link in the description.